The stagecoach wheel splintered with a crack that echoed across the Nebraska plains like a gunshot, and Olivia Thompson felt her stomach lurch as the entire vehicle tilted violently to one side before grinding to a halt in a cloud of dust. She gripped the worn leather seat as the driver cursed above her, his words whipped away by the hot August wind that swept across the endless grassland. It was 1876, and she had been traveling for 3 weeks from Boston to meet her brother in California. But now, she found herself stranded somewhere between Fort Kearny and the Western Territories, with nothing but prairie stretching in every direction. "Axles cracked clean through," the driver announced as he climbed down, his weathered face grim beneath his dusty hat. "We are not going anywhere until I can get this fixed, and that means heading back to Fort Kearny for parts. That is 2 days on horseback, maybe 3. Olivia stepped out of the coach, her dark green traveling dress already wilting in the oppressive heat. 2 other passengers, a silver-haired merchant and his wife, emerged looking equally distressed. The driver unhitched one of the horses and prepared to ride back to town, leaving them with minimal supplies and the other horse to guard the disabled stage. "There is a ranch about 5 miles north," the driver said, pointing toward a line of trees barely visible in the distance. "Belongs to Harrison Zimmerman. He is a good man, fair dealing. You folks might want to walk there and see if he will put you up until I can get back with a new axle." The merchant's wife fanned herself weakly. 5 miles in this heat. "Better than staying here with no shade and the sun beating down," the driver replied. He swung up onto the horse. "I will be back as quick as I can manage." Olivia watched him ride away, her heart sinking as the horse and rider became smaller and smaller against the vast sky. She had never felt so isolated, so far from the civilized streets of Boston, where she had spent her entire 22 years. The prairie seemed to swallow sound itself, leaving only the whisper of wind through the tall grass and the occasional cry of a hawk circling overhead. The merchant, who introduced himself as Mr. Caldwell, decided to stay with the stage and guard their belongings. His wife was too frail to make the walk, he explained, and someone needed to remain with the coach. That left Olivia to make the journey to the ranch alone, carrying only a small bag with a change of clothes and her remaining water. She set off toward the trees, her button-up boots unsuited for hiking across uneven ground. The sun bore down mercilessly, and within an hour her face was flushed and damp with perspiration. She had removed her bonnet to fan herself, forgetting the impropriety in the face of such physical discomfort. The grass reached her knees in places, and she worried about snakes, though she saw none. What she did see, as she crested a low rise, made her stop in her tracks. The ranch spread out before her in a shallow valley, far more extensive than she had imagined. A large 2-story house with a wide porch dominated the homestead, surrounded by several barns, corrals, and outbuildings. Cattle dotted the hillsides, hundreds of them, their reddish-brown hides bright against the golden grass. Closer to the buildings, she could see men working with horses in a training pen, their shouts carrying faintly on the wind. Olivia gathered her courage and continued down the slope. As she approached, a dog began barking, and several of the ranch hands looked up from their work. One of them, a young man with sandy hair, called out something she could not hear, and a moment later a man emerged from the largest barn. Even from a distance, Harrison Zimmerman commanded attention. He stood well over 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders and the confident posture of someone completely at home in his surroundings. As Olivia drew closer, she could make out more details. Dark hair that curled slightly at his collar, sun-bronzed skin, and eyes that were an unusual shade of gray-green. He wore work clothes, dusty denim and a faded blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms. He looked to be in his late 20s, perhaps 30 at most. "Madam," he called out, striding toward her. "Are you all right?" Olivia realized she must look a fright, dusty and disheveled, her hair escaping its pins. "The stagecoach broke down," she said, her voice hoarse from the dry air. "The driver said you might offer shelter until repairs can be made." Harrison reached her in a few long strides, his expression immediately concerned. "Of course. You look parched. Let me get you inside and out of this sun." He did not touch her, maintaining proper distance, but gestured toward the house. "How far did you walk?" 5 miles, I think. Perhaps more." Now that she had stopped moving, Olivia felt the full weight of exhaustion hit her. Her legs trembled and black spots danced at the edges of her vision. Harrison must have seen her sway because he moved quickly, catching her elbow to steady her. "Easy now. Let's get you inside." His voice was deep and calm, the kind of voice that made you feel safe. He called over his shoulder to one of the ranch hands. "Miguel, bring some cool water from the spring house." The house's interior was blessedly dim and several degrees cooler than outside. Harrison guided Olivia to a comfortable chair in a parlor that surprised her with its refinement. She had expected rough frontier accommodations, but the room held well-made furniture, books on shelves and curtains at the windows. A woman's touch, she thought, and felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. "Your wife has a lovely home," Olivia said as Harrison handed her a glass of water. "I am not married," he replied. "My mother decorated this room before she passed. I have kept it as she liked it." He pulled over a footstool and sat down, putting himself at eye level with her. "Drink slowly. How many people were on the stage?" 3 passengers total. "A merchant couple stayed with the coach. They asked me to seek help here." Harrison nodded, his brow furrowed in thought. "I will send some men with a wagon to fetch them. They cannot stay out there in this heat, especially if the lady is elderly." He paused. "What is your name?" "Olivia Thompson." "I am traveling to California." "Harrison Zimmerman, but most folks call me Harris." He smiled for the first time, and it transformed his face from handsome to arresting. "You picked an eventful route, Miss Thompson." Miguel arrived with a pitcher of cold water and a clean towel. Harris thanked him in fluent Spanish, then turned back to Olivia. "Would you like to freshen up? We have a guest room upstairs. It is not fancy, but it is clean and private." "That would be wonderful, thank you." Harris showed her upstairs to a simple but spotless room with a bed covered in a star-pattern quilt, a dresser, and a washstand. "I will have Maria bring you some water for washing. She is the wife of my foreman and she helps with the house. Supper is at 6. Come down when you are ready." Left alone, Olivia sank onto the bed and closed her eyes. She heard Harrison's boots on the stairs, heard him giving orders to his men in that calm, authoritative voice. "A ranch owner," the stage driver had said. Looking around at the well-built house, and remembering the extent of the operation she had seen, she realized Harrison Zimmerman was not just a ranch owner but a successful one. A soft knock at the door announced Maria, a pleasant-faced woman in her 40s who brought hot water, soap, and clean towels. "Mr. Harris says you walked all the way from the stagecoach," she said in slightly accented English. "That is very brave, or maybe very foolish." She smiled to take the sting from her words. "But you are safe now. Mr. Harris, he takes care of his guests." After Maria left, Olivia stripped off her dusty dress and washed away the grime of travel. She put on her other dress, a simpler calico in a soft blue, and did her best to tame her hair. When she looked in the small mirror above the dresser, she saw that the sun had brought out a scatter of freckles across her nose despite her bonnet. Her mother would have been horrified. The thought of her mother, safe in Boston, made Olivia's throat tight with sudden homesickness. She had been so eager to leave, to have an adventure, to see the brother she had not laid eyes on in 5 years. Now she was stranded in Nebraska in a stranger's house, dependent on the kindness of a man she had just met. It was the sort of situation her mother had warned her about, though her mother's warnings had focused more on moral danger than practical difficulties. But Harrison Zimmerman did not seem dangerous. He seemed solid and reliable, like the house he lived in and the land he worked. Olivia found herself curious about him in a way that surprised her. Most men of her acquaintance in Boston were either pale scholars or soft merchants. Harris had the look of someone who worked with his hands, whose strength came from real labor rather than gymnasium exercises. When she went downstairs at 6, she found the dining room table set for 5. Besides herself and Harris, there were Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell, who greeted her with obvious relief. "Mr. Zimmerman's men brought us here in a wagon," Mrs. Caldwell explained. "They even brought our luggage." "Such kindness," Harris shrugged off their thanks. "Anyone would do the same. This is hard country, but that is exactly why we look after each other." Maria served supper: beef steaks, potatoes, fresh bread, and vegetables from the ranch garden. After weeks of stage-stop food, it tasted like a feast to Olivia. She found herself eating with enthusiasm, only remembering her manners when she caught Harris watching her with amusement in his eyes. "It is good to see someone with a healthy appetite," he said. "Too many Eastern ladies pick at their food like birds." "I have discovered that walking 5 miles in the heat makes one less concerned with appearing delicate," Olivia replied, and he laughed, a warm sound that filled the room. Over supper they talked. Harris asked about her journey and her plans. She explained that her brother had gone west during the gold rush years ago and now ran a freight business in Sacramento. He had written to say he was established enough to host her for an extended visit, perhaps even to help her find work as a teacher. "You are a teacher?" Harris asked with interest. "I was at a girls' school in Boston, but I wanted something different, more adventurous." She smiled ruefully. "I suppose I got my wish, though not quite as I imagined." "What did you imagine?" "I do not know exactly." Mountains and gold mines and pioneer spirit. Reading about the West and experiencing it are proving to be very different things. "The reality is harder than the stories," Harris agreed, "but it gets under your skin. I came out here 8 years ago with almost nothing. Now I cannot imagine living anywhere else." "You are from the East," Olivia was surprised. "Pennsylvania. My father was a steel worker. I was supposed to follow him into the mills, but I wanted something different too." His eyes grew distant. "I wanted land and sky and work that felt real. I wanted to build something of my own." "And you have," Mr. Caldwell said approvingly. "This is a fine operation, Mr. Zimmerman. You should be proud." After supper, the Caldwells retired early, exhausted from their ordeal. Olivia knew she should do the same, but she felt restless despite her fatigue. When Harris suggested they sit on the porch to catch the evening breeze, she accepted gladly. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple that seemed impossibly vivid. The heat of the day was finally breaking, replaced by a pleasant coolness that carried the scent of grass and cattle and earth. Olivia sat in a rocking chair while Harris leaned against the porch rail, and they watched the day fade into twilight. "It is beautiful," Olivia said softly. "The colors are nothing like what we see in Boston." "The sky is bigger out here," Harris replied. "There is nothing to block the view, so you see it all. On clear nights, the stars are so bright you could almost read by them." He glanced at her. "How long will you be stuck here, do you think?" The driver said 2 or 3 days to get back from Fort Kearny, then however long to make the repairs. "Perhaps a week total." You are welcome to stay as long as necessary, all of you. You are very generous to strangers." Harris shrugged. "Like I said, out here we look after each other. Besides, you are not exactly strangers anymore. We broke bread together. That means something." They sat in companionable silence for a while. Olivia found herself stealing glances at Harris's profile, noting the strong line of his jaw, the slight crook in his nose that suggested it had been broken at some point. He caught her looking and smiled. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That you are not what I expected a Western rancher to be." "What did you expect? Someone rougher, I suppose. Less educated. Your home has books. My mother insisted I get an education before we moved west. She said civilization was not about where you lived but what you carried in your head and heart." His voice softened. "She died 3 years ago. Fever. She loved this place, but it took her in the end." "I am sorry," Olivia said, and meant it. She had 5 good years here. She saw the ranch succeed. That meant everything to her. He straightened up. "I should let you get some rest. Tomorrow I need to check on the cattle in the north pasture, but Maria will look after you. Make yourself at home." "Thank you, Harris." He tipped his hat to her and headed toward the bunkhouse where his men slept. Olivia watched him go, thinking about what he had said about his mother. She could hear the love in his voice when he spoke of her, the lingering grief. It made her like him even more. The next morning, Olivia woke to the sound of roosters and men's voices. She dressed and went downstairs to find Maria in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. Mrs. Caldwell was already up, helping to set the table. "The men eat at 5, Maria explained. "But Mr. Harris said to let you sleep. He and most of the hands have already gone out to work." Olivia felt a small stab of disappointment that she would not see Harris at breakfast, which was ridiculous. She barely knew the man. Yet she found herself thinking about him as she ate, wondering what he was doing, whether he thought about her at all. The day passed slowly. She helped Maria with some light housework, grateful for something to occupy her hands. She wrote a letter to her brother, explaining the delay. She read from Harris's collection of books, discovering he had eclectic taste. Shakespeare alongside agricultural journals, Dickens next to books on animal husbandry. Harris returned in late afternoon, dusty and tired. He washed up at the pump outside, and Olivia watched from the window as he sluiced water over his head, his shirt plastered to his back. She turned away, feeling her cheeks heat, but the image stayed with her. At supper, Harris was quieter than the night before, the weariness of a long day's work evident in the lines around his eyes. But he still made conversation, asking Mrs. Caldwell about her grandchildren, discussing cattle prices with Mr. Caldwell. And he asked Olivia about what she had read. "The Dickens," she said. "Great Expectations. I have read it before, but it is like visiting an old friend." "That is one of my mother's favorites," Harris said. "She read it aloud to me and my father during our first winter here. The blizzards were so bad we could not leave the house for days at a time. Those books kept us sane." After supper, they found their way to the porch again. It was becoming a habit, Olivia realized, and one she looked forward to. There was something intimate about sitting together in the dusk, the world reduced to just the two of them and the gathering darkness. "Tell me about your brother," Harris said. "You must be close if you are traveling all this way to see him." "We were close as children. James is 6 years older than me, and he always looked after me. But when he left for California, it broke my heart. We have written letters, but it is not the same." She paused. "What about you? Do you have siblings?" "A sister back in Pennsylvania. She is married to a banker, very respectable." His tone suggested he found that amusing. "She thinks I am crazy for staying out here. She writes me letters trying to convince me to come home, sell the ranch, and settle down properly." "Will you?" "Never." The word was emphatic. "This is my home. This is where I belong. I would suffocate in a city now. I thought I would suffocate in Boston, Olivia admitted. Everyone had such clear ideas about what I should do, who I should marry, how I should live. Teaching was acceptable, but only until I found a suitable husband. The idea of anything more was scandalous. What more did you want? I wanted to matter. To do something that made a difference, not just run a household and raise children. She stopped, worried she had said too much, revealed too much. But Harris was nodding. That is why I came west, to build something that mattered. To prove I could do it on my own terms. He looked at her, his eyes serious. I think we might be alike in that way, Olivia. The sound of her name on his lips, without the formal Miss Thompson, sent a little thrill through her. It felt significant, like the crossing of an invisible boundary. She met his gaze and saw something there that made her breath catch. Before either of them could speak, Miguel came around the corner of the house. "Boss, we have got a problem with the fence in the east pasture. Some of the posts came loose." Harris sighed. "I will come look." He turned to Olivia. "Excuse me. Duty calls." After he left, Olivia sat alone on the porch, thinking about their conversation. She had never met a man who seemed to understand her restlessness, her desire for something more than what society prescribed. Her mother would say it was unwomanly to have such ambitions. But Harris seemed to respect it, even admire it. The third day of her stay dawned clear and hot. At breakfast, Harris announced he needed to ride to the North Range to check on a herd of new calves. "It is a beautiful ride," he said, looking at Olivia. "Would you like to come? Maria can lend you some divided skirts if you can ride." "I can ride," Olivia said, perhaps too eagerly. "I would love to see more of the ranch." An hour later, she was mounted on a gentle mare named Daisy, wearing borrowed clothing that felt scandalous and liberating at once. Harris rode beside her on a tall bay gelding, and they set out across the grassland. Away from the ranch buildings, the prairie revealed its subtle beauty. Wildflowers bloomed in patches of purple and yellow. Birds burst from the grass at their approach. A small herd of antelope watched them pass, then bounded away with effortless grace. Harris pointed out landmarks, a creek lined with cottonwoods, a rock formation that marked the edge of his property, the distant mountains that marked the Wyoming border. "How much land do you have?" Olivia asked. 2,000 acres that I own outright, plus grazing rights on another 5,000. He said it matter-of-factly, but Olivia was staggered by the number. In Massachusetts, such holdings would make someone a lord. They reached the North Range and found the calves healthy, frolicking beside their mothers. Harris dismounted to examine a few more closely, running his hands over their legs and flanks with practiced ease. The cattle seemed to trust him, not shying away from his touch. "You love this," Olivia observed. "Every part of it," Harris agreed. "Even the hard parts, especially the hard parts maybe because that is when you find out what you are made of." He swung back into his saddle. "There is a place I want to show you. Are you up for a bit more riding? Lead on." They rode west for another half hour until they came to a spot where a spring bubbled up from the ground, creating a small oasis of green in the golden landscape. Willow trees grew around the water, and the grass was thick and soft. Harris helped Olivia dismount, his hand strong and steady on her waist, lingering perhaps a moment longer than strictly necessary. "This is my favorite place on the whole ranch," he said. "I come here when I need to think." They sat by the spring, and Harris unpacked the lunch Maria had sent: sandwiches, apples, and a canteen of lemonade. They ate and talked, the conversation flowing easily. Harris told her about his first year on the ranch, the struggles and near failures, the moment when he finally felt like he might succeed. Olivia told him about teaching, about the bright young students she had loved working with, about her frustration at being limited to teaching only the most superficial subjects, because anything more was deemed inappropriate for young ladies. "You would make a good teacher for boys too," Harris said. "You have passion for knowledge. That is what makes a real teacher." "That is kind of you to say. I am not being kind, I am being honest." He plucked a stem of grass and turned it in his fingers. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you spoken for, engaged, or promised to someone back east?" Olivia's heart began to beat faster. "No. There was a man my mother favored, a lawyer's son, but I did not love him and I refused him." "Good," Harris said softly. "Good." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw in his eyes what she had hoped to see, what she had been half afraid to acknowledge in herself. "Good, because I find myself developing feelings for you, Olivia, and I wanted to know if I was wasting my time." "You are not wasting your time," she whispered. Harris reached out and took her hand, his calloused palm warm against hers. "I know we have only known each other a few days. I know you are on your way to California, but I need you to know that I have never felt this way before. Like I have been waiting for someone without knowing it, and suddenly here you are." "I feel it too," Olivia admitted. "It does not make any sense. It is too fast, too unlikely, but I feel it." He moved closer, and she thought he might kiss her, but instead he just squeezed her hand gently. "I do not want to rush you or take advantage. You are a guest in my home, and that means something, but I want you to know my intentions are serious." "What are your intentions?" Olivia asked, emboldened by his honesty. "To court you properly, if you will allow it. To give you time to know your own heart, and if your heart agrees with mine." He paused. "To ask you to stay. Stay here." "I know it is a lot to ask. You have plans, your brother is expecting you. But Olivia, I have land and a home and a good life here. What I do not have is someone to share it with. I thought I was content alone, but meeting you has shown me what I have been missing." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. It was everything she had not known she wanted, offered by a man she had only just met but who somehow felt like the missing piece of her life. But doubt crept in. "Harris, we barely know each other. What if this is just loneliness? What if in a few weeks or months we realize we made a mistake?" "Then we will deal with it honestly," he said, "but I do not think that will happen." "Do you?" She searched her heart and found only certainty. "No, I do not think it will happen either." They stayed by the spring for another hour, talking about everything and nothing, hands clasped together. When they finally rode back to the ranch, Olivia felt as though she were floating. The world looked different, brighter, and more full of possibility. That evening on the porch, Harris said, "I need to go to Fort Kearny tomorrow to pick up supplies. Would you come with me? We could send a telegram to your brother, let him know about the delay." "I would like that." They set out early the next morning in a wagon, just the two of them. The ride to Fort Kearny took several hours, giving them more time to talk. Harris told her about his plans for the ranch, his hope to breed better cattle, his dream of building a school for the ranch children in the area. Olivia shared her thoughts about education reform, about the books she wanted to write, about teaching methods she had read about but never been allowed to implement. Fort Kearny was a bustling place, a fort town that served as a vital stop on the westward trails. They drew some curious looks, a rancher and a well-dressed Eastern woman, but Harris ignored the attention. He conducted his business efficiently, then took her to the telegraph office. Olivia composed a message to her brother. "Stagecoach delayed in Nebraska. Safe with kind family. Will continue journey when repairs complete. Do not worry. Love, Olivia." It was not entirely truthful, but she was not ready to explain Harris to James yet, not until she understood it better herself. They had lunch at a small restaurant, and Harris introduced her to several people he knew, always with obvious pride. "This is Miss Olivia Thompson from Boston," he would say, and people would nod and smile and make her feel welcome. On the ride back to the ranch, storm clouds gathered in the west. "We might get wet," Harris said, eyeing the sky. "The wagon cover will help, but we should probably hurry." They did hurry, but the storm moved faster. It caught them an hour from home, unleashing a torrent of rain and wind. Lightning cracked across the sky, and the horses whinnied nervously. Harris pulled the wagon to a halt under a small cluster of trees. "Not much shelter, but better than nothing," he shouted over the wind. He climbed into the back of the wagon with Olivia, pulling the canvas cover tight around them. They huddled together in the small space, the wagon rocking with each gust. Thunder boomed directly overhead, and Olivia flinched. Harris put his arm around her shoulders. "It is all right. The worst will pass soon." She was pressed against his side, could feel the solid warmth of him through their damp clothing. The intimacy of their situation was not lost on her, but she felt no fear, no impropriety. She felt safe. "Olivia," Harris said, and she looked up at him. His face was inches from hers, his eyes intense. "I need to know, when the stage is repaired, will you get on it?" "I do not know," she said honestly. "A week ago I would have said yes without hesitation, but now I am not sure California is where I belong anymore." He kissed her then, soft and careful, asking a question with his lips. She answered by kissing him back, her hand coming up to touch his face. The kiss deepened, and Olivia felt like she was falling and flying at the same time. She had been kissed before by the lawyer's son who thought she was his, but it had never felt like this. This felt like coming home. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Harris rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said. "I know it is crazy to say so soon, but I love you, Olivia Thompson." "I love you too," she whispered back, and saying the words made them real. The storm passed, and they drove home through a world washed clean and sparkling. When they reached the ranch, Harris helped her down from the wagon, his hands lingering on her waist. "We should talk to the Caldwells," he said. "They should know about us, that we are courting." "Yes," Olivia agreed, but when they entered the house, they found the Caldwells in an agitated state. Miguel was with them, and he turned to Harris with relief. "Boss, the stage driver is back. He has got the new axle fitted. He says they can leave at first light tomorrow." Olivia felt her heart sink. "Tomorrow, so soon." "Thank you, Miguel," Harris said. His face was carefully neutral, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. That night at supper, Mrs. Caldwell talked excitedly about continuing their journey. Mr. Caldwell calculated how much time they had lost and how quickly they might make it up. Olivia said nothing, pushing food around her plate. After the Caldwells retired, Harris led Olivia out to the porch. They stood at the rail, looking out at the star-filled sky. "You do not have to go," Harris said quietly. "Stay, Olivia, stay and give us a chance." "I barely know you," she said, but the words were weak. "You know me better than people I have known for years. You know what matters." He turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her arms. "I am asking you to take a leap of faith. I am asking you to trust what you feel and stay here with me. Not as my guest, but as my future. Marry me, Olivia. Marry you." She had known it was coming, had felt it building between them, but hearing the words still shocked her. "I know it is fast. I know your family will think I am some frontier rogue who swept you off your feet. But I am offering you a real life, Olivia, a partnership. We can build something here together. You can teach, start that school I talked about. You can write your books. You can be more than what Boston would let you be." "My brother," she said weakly. "He is expecting me. Send him a telegram. Invite him to our wedding. Let him see that you are happy and safe and loved. What if we are wrong? What if this is a mistake?" Harris cupped her face in his hands. Look me in the eyes and tell me this feels like a mistake." She looked and saw love and certainty and hope. She saw the life they could have together, the partnership he promised. And she knew with sudden crystal clarity that this was not a mistake. This was fate or destiny or whatever force had led her stage to break down in front of his ranch. "No," she whispered. "It does not feel like a mistake. It feels right." "Then say yes. Say you will marry me and make this house a home and let me spend the rest of my life making you happy." "Yes," Olivia said, and then louder. "Yes, Harris, I will marry you." He kissed her with joy and passion, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. When he set her down, they were both laughing, giddy with the enormity of what they had just decided. "Tomorrow morning," Harris said, "we will tell the Caldwells. We will send them off with our good wishes, and then we will start planning our wedding." "Tomorrow morning," Olivia agreed. She slept fitfully that night, her mind racing with plans and possibilities. She thought of her mother's reaction, which would surely be horrified. She thought of James, who might understand or might think she had lost her mind. But mostly she thought of Harris, of the life they would build together, of the mornings waking up beside him and the evenings watching the sunset from their porch. At breakfast, Harris announced their engagement. Mrs. Caldwell gasped with delight, clasping her hands together. "Oh, how romantic!" "A whirlwind courtship in the West." Mr. Caldwell looked more skeptical. "Miss Thompson, are you certain? This is very sudden." "I am certain," Olivia said, reaching for Harris's hand under the table. "I know it must seem impulsive, but I have never been more sure of anything." When the stage pulled away later that morning, Olivia stood beside Harris and watched it go without regret. Mrs. Caldwell waved enthusiastically from the window, already no doubt composing the story she would tell about the stranded woman who married a rancher. After the stage disappeared from view, Harris turned to Olivia. "No second thoughts. None. You are stuck with me now. I can live with that." They spent the next week preparing for the wedding. Maria threw herself into the preparations with enthusiasm, recruiting several other ranch wives to help. They cleaned the house until it gleamed, prepared food, and worked on Olivia's dress. One of the women was a skilled seamstress and altered one of her own gowns to fit Olivia. Adding lace and embroidery, Harris rode to Fort Kearney to arrange for a minister and to send telegrams. One to Olivia's mother, informing her of the engagement and wedding. One to James, with the same news plus an invitation to attend, and one to his sister in Pennsylvania, who he predicted would think he had lost his mind. James responded, Harris told her when he returned. "He says he is happy for you, but he wants to meet me before the wedding. He will arrive in 5 days." Olivia felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. James's approval mattered to her, and she hoped desperately that he and Harris would get along. James arrived on a rented horse, travel-worn and dusty. He was taller than Olivia remembered. His boyish face matured into that of a man in his late 20s. He embraced his sister fiercely, then turned to study Harris with assessing eyes. "So you are the man who swept my sister off her feet in less than a week," James said. "I am the man who fell in love with your sister in less than a week," Harris corrected, "and who plans to spend the rest of his life proving she made the right choice." James considered this. "Show me your ranch." Harris took James on a tour that lasted hours. Olivia watched them ride out together, her stomach in knots. When they returned at dusk, both men were dusty and tired, but they were also talking like old friends. "He has got a good operation here, Liv," James told her. "And more importantly, he clearly adores you. I can see it in the way he looks at you, the way he talks about you." He pulled her aside. "Are you sure? Really sure? Because if you have any doubts, I will put you on my horse right now and take you to California, no questions asked." "I am sure, James, I love him. Then I am happy for you." He hugged her again. "Mother will have fits, you know, I know. But Mother would have fits about anything that was not exactly what she planned." "True enough," he smiled. "Harris invited me to stay on for a few weeks after the wedding. I might take him up on it. I have not seen you in 5 years. I want to make sure you are really settled and happy before I leave." The wedding took place on a Sunday afternoon in the ranch's front yard. The minister from Fort Kearney performed the ceremony, and it seemed like half the county turned out to witness it. Ranch families from miles around arrived, curious to meet the Eastern bride who had captured Harris Zimmerman's heart. Olivia wore the altered dress, white cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs. Maria had woven wildflowers into her hair. She carried a simple bouquet of prairie roses. As she walked toward Harris, who waited beneath an arch of willow branches, she felt the rightness of this moment in every fiber of her being. Harris wore his best suit, looking almost uncomfortable in the formal clothing, but his eyes never left her face. When they joined hands, his were trembling slightly. The minister kept the ceremony short and sweet. When he pronounced them man and wife, Harris kissed her to the cheers and applause of their guests. Olivia felt tears of joy sliding down her cheeks. The celebration lasted into the evening. There was food and music and dancing. Miguel played guitar while another ranch hand produced a fiddle. James gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. Harris's foreman, Diego, made a short speech in Spanish that Maria translated as wishing them many healthy children and a long, happy life together. As the sun set and the party continued, Harris pulled Olivia away from the crowd. They walked hand in hand to their favorite spot by the spring, needing a moment alone. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Zimmerman?" Harris asked, drawing her into his arms. "Like the luckiest woman alive," she said honestly. "A month ago, if someone had told me I would be married to a Nebraska rancher, I would have thought they were insane. But here I am, and I cannot imagine being anywhere else." "I am the lucky one," Harris said, kissing her softly. "I was resigned to being alone, building this ranch for its own sake. But now I have you, and everything means more. I want to build it for us, for our future, for our children." "Children," Olivia said, testing the word. A month ago, the idea of children had seemed like a distant obligation. Now it felt like a promise, a hope. They stayed by the spring until full dark, talking about their future. Harris told her he had been thinking about her idea of a school. "We could build it on the west side of the property, where the creek runs. Close enough for children to walk from the neighboring ranches, but far enough that it has its own space. You could teach not just basic reading and writing, but everything you wanted to teach in Boston. Science and mathematics and literature. You would support that." "Even if people thought it was strange. I would support anything that made you happy and fulfilled. That is what marriage should be, Olivia. Partners helping each other become the best versions of themselves." When they returned to the ranch house, most of the guests had departed. James was staying in the guest room, and he tactfully made himself scarce as Harris led Olivia upstairs to the room that was now theirs. The weeks that followed were a blur of happiness. James extended his stay, helping Harris with ranch work and getting to know his new brother-in-law. Olivia threw herself into making the house truly hers, adding her own touches while respecting the memory of Harris's mother. She wrote long letters to her mother and friends in Boston, trying to explain her new life in words that would make sense to people who had never seen the wide open spaces or understood the allure of the frontier. Her mother wrote back, expressing disappointment and concern but grudging acceptance. "I suppose if you are determined to throw away your prospects for love and adventure, at least you married a man of property," she wrote. It was not exactly a blessing, but it was better than Olivia had expected. In October, James finally prepared to leave for California. The day before his departure, he and Olivia took a long walk around the ranch. "You are happy," James observed. "Truly happy. I can see it in everything about you." "I am," Olivia confirmed. "I know it happened fast, and I know it is not the life anyone expected for me, but this is where I belong, James." "Then I am glad." He paused. "Harris is a good man, Liv. He loves you deeply. Anyone with eyes can see that. And he is smart enough to recognize your worth and give you room to be yourself. That is rarer than gold. Will you come back to visit? Try and stop me. You are my only sister, and I missed too many years already." He grinned. "Besides, I want to meet my future nieces and nephews." After James left, Olivia felt his absence keenly for a few days. But the rhythm of ranch life kept her occupied. Harris taught her to ride better, to recognize the signs of weather changes, to understand the needs of cattle. She taught him more sophisticated cooking, introduced him to poets he had never read, challenged him to think about social issues in new ways. In November, Harris took her to a regional cattlemen's meeting in Omaha. It was Olivia's first trip to a real city since arriving in Nebraska, and she found herself surprisingly unimpressed. The buildings felt too close together, the air too thick with smoke. She was eager to return to the ranch, to the open sky and clean air. "I think the West has claimed you completely," Harris said with amusement as their train rolled back toward Fort Kearney. "I think you might be right," Olivia admitted. Winter arrived with dramatic suddenness. One day it was merely cold, the next a blizzard howled across the plains. Olivia experienced her first Nebraska winter, understanding now why Harris's mother had read Dickens aloud during the long, dark months. She and Harris spent those months planning the school in detail, sketching out building plans, discussing curriculum, writing to educational supply companies back east. "We will start building in spring," Harris decided. "Get the structure up over summer and you can open in the fall. We will need to hire another teacher too, someone to help with the younger children while you focus on the older students." "You have thought about this a lot," Olivia said, touched by how seriously he took her dreams. "Your dreams are my dreams now," Harris said simply. Christmas was a quiet affair, just the two of them and the ranch hands who had nowhere else to go. Maria cooked an enormous feast, and they sang carols around the fireplace. Harris gave Olivia a beautiful writing desk he had ordered from Chicago. She gave him a set of leather-bound agricultural journals she had sent for from New York. "We both give practical gifts," Harris observed with a laugh. "We are practical people," Olivia replied. In January, Olivia realized her monthly courses were late. She said nothing at first, not wanting to raise hopes prematurely. But when another week passed, she confided in Maria. "I think I might be with child." Maria's face lit up. "We must be sure before you tell Mr. Harris. Do not get his hopes up if we are not certain." But as the weeks passed and other signs appeared, certainty grew. Finally, in early February, Olivia told Harris over breakfast, "I am expecting a baby. In September, we think." Harris froze, his coffee cup halfway to his mouth. Then he set it down carefully and came around the table to kneel beside her chair. "A baby! We are having a baby! We are having a baby," she confirmed, laughing at his expression of wonder. He pulled her into his arms, careful of her even though she was barely showing. "I am going to be a father," he said, sounding dazed. "Are you happy?" "Happy, Olivia, I am overwhelmed with happiness. This is everything. You are everything." The pregnancy progressed normally, though Olivia found the summer heat harder to bear as her body changed. Harris was attentive to the point of being overprotective, constantly worrying about her doing too much. She insisted on staying involved in the school construction, even if all she could do was sit in the shade and direct. The school building took shape through the summer, a sturdy wooden structure with large windows for light and a fireplace for winter warmth. Men from neighboring ranches contributed labor, looking forward to having a real school for their children. A young teacher named Margaret Fleming arrived from Iowa, eager for the adventure of frontier teaching. She and Olivia spent hours planning lessons and organizing supplies. In late August, as Olivia grew larger and more uncomfortable, she began to worry about the birth itself. The nearest doctor was in Fort Kearney, hours away. What if something went wrong? Harris sensed her fear. "Maria has delivered babies before," he reassured her, "and we will have Doc Brennan come from Fort Kearney a week before your time and stay until after the baby is born. You will be fine, my love. Both of you will be fine." On September 15th, Olivia went into labor. It started as a dull ache in her back, progressing through the day into unmistakable contractions. Harris sent for Doc Brennan, who arrived in time to supervise the birth. Maria and the doctor coached Olivia through the long hours of labor. Harris paced downstairs, Miguel keeping him company and periodically bringing him reports. Finally, in the early hours of September 16th, Olivia gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The infant wailed lustily, and Doc Brennan declared him perfect. They cleaned the baby and placed him in Olivia's arms, and she looked down at the small red face with overwhelming love. Harris was allowed up, and he entered the room with tentative steps, as though afraid he might break something. When he saw Olivia holding their son, his eyes filled with tears. "We have a son," Olivia said softly. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names but never quite decided. Now, looking at the baby's face, Harris said, "Henry, after your grandfather, Henry James Zimmerman." "Henry," Olivia repeated. "Yes, that is perfect." Harris held his son for the first time with the exaggerated care of all new fathers. The baby quieted in his large hands, seeming to sense safety. "Hello, Henry," Harris whispered. "I am your father, and I promise to do my best by you." The weeks after Henry's birth passed in a blur of feedings and diaper changes and sleepless nights. But there was also overwhelming joy in watching Harris with their son. He was a natural father, patient and gentle, singing lullabies off-key at 3 in the morning when Henry fussed. The school opened in early October with 15 students ranging from 6 to 14 years old. Olivia could not teach full-time yet, still recovering from childbirth and nursing Henry, but she visited often and helped Margaret plan lessons. They had students whose parents had never learned to read, children hungry for knowledge and opportunity. "You are making a real difference," Harris told her one evening as they watched the sunset, Henry asleep in her arms. "These children will have opportunities they never would have had without you, without us," Olivia corrected. "You built the school, you made it possible. We are a good team, the best team." The first year of Henry's life flew by. James visited in the spring, marveling at how much his nephew had grown. "He has your eyes, Liv, but Harris's stubborn chin." "Stubborn is a Zimmerman trait," Harris agreed cheerfully. When James left, he extracted a promise that they would visit California the following year. "I want Henry to know his uncle," he said. In the summer of 1878, when Henry was nearly 2, Olivia discovered she was pregnant again. This time the news was less surprising but no less joyful. Harris was delighted at the prospect of a second child. "Maybe a daughter this time," he said hopefully. "Maybe," Olivia agreed, "or another son. Either way." The second pregnancy was easier than the first, perhaps because Olivia knew what to expect. She continued teaching part-time at the school, which now had 23 students and was bursting at its seams. They began planning an addition. In March of 1879, Olivia gave birth to a daughter. This birth was faster and easier than Henry's, much to everyone's relief. The baby girl had dark hair like her father and a surprisingly loud cry for such a small thing. What should we name her? Harris asked, holding his daughter with experienced ease. I was thinking Rose, Olivia said. After the prairie roses that bloom here in summer. Rose Zimmerman, I like it. Harris smiled down at his daughter. Hello, Rose, welcome to the family. Henry, at 2.5, was fascinated by his baby sister. He wanted to help with everything, from fetching diapers to singing her songs. Under careful supervision, he was allowed to hold Rose, his small face serious with concentration. Gentle, he would murmur, patting her head softly. Gentle with baby Rose. The years that followed were full and busy. The ranch prospered, growing to 3,000 acres. The school expanded, eventually employing 3 teachers and serving children from ranches as far as 20 miles away. Olivia wrote articles about frontier education that were published in Eastern journals, bringing attention to the challenges and opportunities of rural schooling. Harris became respected in the region, serving on cattlemen's associations and advising new ranchers. But no matter how busy he was, he always made time for his family. He taught Henry to ride and rope. He bounced Rose on his knee and told her stories. He sat with Olivia on the porch every evening they could, talking about the day and making plans for tomorrow. In 1881, Olivia gave birth to twins, a boy and girl they named Samuel and Grace. The house became wonderfully chaotic, full of children's laughter and occasional tears. Harris added on to the house, building more bedrooms and a larger kitchen. Maria recruited her daughters to help manage the increased housework. 4 children, Olivia said one evening when the chaos had finally subsided and the children were asleep. How did we end up with 4 children? Well, when a husband and wife love each other very much, Harris began teasingly. She swatted his arm. You know what I mean. It feels like just yesterday it was just the 2 of us and now we have this whole family. Regrets? He asked, suddenly serious. Not a single one. I look at our life, our children, the school, everything we have built together, and I feel nothing but gratitude. That stagecoach breaking down was the best thing that ever happened to me. It was the best thing that ever happened to me too, Harris said. He pulled her close, kissing her temple. You gave me everything I did not know I needed. Love, family, purpose beyond just building a ranch. You made my house a home and my life complete. They sat together in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of the prairie night. From inside the house came a small cry, probably Samuel waking from a dream. Olivia started to rise, but Harris gently pushed her back down. I will get him. You rest. She watched him go inside, this man who had offered her shelter from a broken-down stage and ended up offering his heart. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the broken axle that had seemed like a disaster but had actually been destiny. Harris returned carrying Samuel, who had indeed had a bad dream. The little boy curled against his father's chest, already falling back asleep. Harris settled into his chair with his son, rocking gently. You think they will understand someday? Harris asked quietly. How much we love them, how much they mean to us. When they have children of their own, they will understand, Olivia said. That is how it works. Tell me again how we met, Samuel mumbled, not quite asleep. It was his favorite story, one he asked for constantly. Olivia smiled and began the tale he loved. Once upon a time, I was on a stagecoach traveling across Nebraska. The coach broke down in the middle of nowhere, and I had to walk 5 miles across the prairie to a ranch. The rancher who owned the land was the handsomest, kindest man I had ever met. Papa, Samuel murmured. Yes, your papa, and when I met him, I knew my adventure was just beginning. He offered me shelter from the sun and safety from the storm, but what I did not know yet was that he was also offering me his heart. And Mama took it. Harris continued the story. She took my heart and gave me hers in return. And we have been together ever since, building our life on this prairie, raising you children and loving each other more with every passing day. Happily ever after, Samuel sighed, finally giving in to sleep. Happily ever after, Olivia agreed, meeting Harris's eyes over their son's head. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. The children grew, Henry becoming a serious, thoughtful boy who loved books as much as ranching. Rose proved to have a gift for music, somehow teaching herself to play the piano Harris bought her. The twins were inseparable, getting into mischief together and defending each other fiercely. When Henry turned 10, Harris began teaching him the real work of ranching. The boy took to it naturally, showing the same instinct for cattle and land that his father possessed. But he also loved learning, spending hours at the school even after his lessons were done, reading everything he could get his hands on. "He has the best of both of us," Harris observed proudly. Rose at 8 was more interested in music and art than ranching or schoolwork. She would spend hours drawing the prairie landscape, capturing details that most people missed. Olivia encouraged her artistic bent, ordering supplies from Chicago and teaching her what she knew about composition and color. The twins were only 6, but already showing distinct personalities. Samuel was adventurous and bold, always climbing trees or racing his pony. Grace was quieter, more thoughtful, with a gift for numbers that astounded her teachers. In 1887, the family took the promised trip to California to visit James. The journey was an adventure in itself, the children wide-eyed at everything they saw. James had married a woman named Catherine, and they had 2 children of their own. The cousins bonded immediately, and the adults stayed up late reminiscing and making plans for future visits. "You have built a good life, Liv," James told his sister during a quiet moment. "I am proud of you. I am proud of you too. Your business is thriving. But my life is not as full as yours. You have something special with Harris. I see it in every look you exchange, every easy touch." "That is rare. I know how lucky I am," Olivia said softly. "Every single day I know." Back in Nebraska, life settled into its comfortable rhythms. The ranch continued to prosper. The school now had over 50 students and had become a model for rural education, with visitors coming from other states to see what Olivia and her teachers had built. When Olivia turned 40, Harris threw her a surprise party. It seemed like everyone in the county showed up, all of them eager to celebrate the woman who had brought education and culture to their frontier community. Speeches were made, and Olivia found herself crying at the outpouring of affection and gratitude. "I only did what any teacher would do," she protested. "No," said Margaret Fleming, who had become Olivia's dear friend over the years. "You did what most teachers dream of doing but never get the chance. You changed lives, Olivia. You opened worlds for these children." That night, after the guests had left and the children were asleep, Harris led Olivia to their bedroom. He had a gift for her, a leather-bound journal. "For your book," he said. "You have talked for years about writing down your experiences, your thoughts on education. I think it is time you did it." Olivia opened the journal, seeing the fine paper and Harris's inscription on the first page. "To my brilliant wife, who has taught me more about love and life than any book ever could. May these pages capture your wisdom for others to learn from." She threw her arms around him, overwhelmed by his thoughtfulness. "I love you so much. How did I get so lucky?" "I ask myself the same question every day," Harris replied, holding her close. The years rolled on. Henry graduated from the school and went east to study agriculture at a university, planning to return and help modernize the ranch. Rose won a scholarship to an art school in Chicago, her talent undeniable. The twins were teenagers now, Samuel helping his father full-time on the ranch while Grace taught younger students at the school, having inherited her mother's gift for teaching. In 1895, when Olivia was 45 and Harris 51, Henry returned from university with a degree and a bride. Her name was Laura, and she was from Pennsylvania, the daughter of farmers. She fit into ranch life as though born to it, and within a year she gave Olivia and Harris their first grandchild, a boy they named Thomas. Holding her grandson for the first time, Olivia was struck by the passage of time. It seemed impossible that the young woman who had walked across the prairie looking for shelter was now a grandmother. But every choice, every moment had led to this, to a house full of love, to children and now grandchildren, to a life richer than anything she could have imagined. "What are you thinking?" Harris asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her and the baby. "That I am glad the stagecoach broke down," Olivia said. "That I am glad I walked 5 miles in the heat to find your ranch. That I am glad I said yes when you offered me shelter and then offered me your heart. Best decision I ever made," Harris murmured, "asking you to stay. Best decision I ever made agreeing." Rose came home from Chicago for the birth, and the family gathered around the new baby. Olivia watched her children interact with their nephew, saw the love and gentleness they showed, and felt a deep satisfaction. She and Harris had raised them well, given them both roots and wings. Over the next few years, more grandchildren arrived. Rose married a musician and had 2 daughters. The twins eventually married as well, Samuel to a rancher's daughter and Grace to a teacher she met while studying at a women's college. The house was constantly full of children's laughter again, this time a new generation. Olivia did write her book, a treatise on rural education that was published to critical acclaim. She received invitations to speak at universities and educational conferences, becoming recognized as an expert in her field. Harris traveled with her when he could, proud to be the husband of such an accomplished woman. But no matter where they went or what accolades Olivia received, the ranch remained home. The prairie remained the landscape of their hearts. They still sat on the porch most evenings, holding hands and watching the sun set over land they knew intimately after decades of living on it. In 1905, they celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary with a party that brought together 3 generations. Henry proposed a toast, "To my parents, who taught us all what love looks like, who showed us that partnership and respect and genuine affection are the foundation of a good marriage. We are who we are because of what you built together." "Hear, hear," the family chorused, raising their glasses. Later, alone on their porch, Harris said, 30 years. It has gone so fast." "And yet I can barely remember my life before you," Olivia replied. "It feels like we have always been together." "I was only half alive before you," Harris said. "You completed me, Olivia, made me whole." "We completed each other," she corrected gently. The years continued to be kind to them. They aged together, Harris's dark hair going silver, Olivia's figure rounder and softer with the years. But they still loved each other with the passion and devotion of their youth. They still talked for hours, still found joy in each other's company, still reached for each other in the night. When Harris turned 70, he finally handed over day-to-day management of the ranch to Henry, though he still rode out most days to check on the cattle and talk with the hands. Olivia had retired from active teaching, but still served on the school board and mentored young teachers. They were respected elders in the community, people who had built something lasting and good. One evening in the summer of 1915, they sat on their porch as they had done thousands of times before. The sunset was particularly beautiful, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and purple. Harris held Olivia's hand, his thumb absently stroking her knuckles. "If you could go back," he said thoughtfully, "to that day the stage broke down, would you change anything?" Olivia considered the question seriously. "Not a single thing. Every moment, every choice led us here, led us to this life, these children and grandchildren, this love. I would not risk changing any of it. Even the hard parts, the droughts and the blizzards and the struggles, even those. They made us stronger, they taught us we could weather anything together." She squeezed his hand. "What about you? Any regrets?" "Only that I did not meet you sooner," Harris said. "But then, maybe we would not have been ready for each other. Maybe we needed to live the lives we lived to become the people we are now." "That is very wise," Olivia said with a smile. "I have my moments." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun slipped below the horizon and the first stars appeared. The house behind them was full of family. 3 generations gathered for a summer reunion. They could hear laughter and music, the sounds of life and love continuing. "We did good, did we not?" Harris asked softly. "We did very good," Olivia agreed. "We built something that will last, Harris. Not just the ranch or the school, but a family that loves each other. A legacy of kindness and partnership and commitment. Our grandchildren will tell their grandchildren about us, about the rancher who offered shelter and the Eastern woman who stayed. About the couple who fell in love despite the odds," Harris added. "About the couple who fell in love because of the odds," Olivia corrected. "The broken stage, the long walk, the unlikely meeting, all of it brought us together. We were always meant to find each other." "Do you believe in fate?" Harris asked. "I believe in us," Olivia replied. "And if that is fate, then yes, I believe in it with all my heart." They sat together as darkness fell completely and the stars came out in their thousands, bright against the velvet sky. Inside the house, someone started playing the piano, Rose's youngest daughter, showing off her inherited talent. The music drifted out to them, sweet and clear. Harris pulled Olivia closer, and she rested her head on his shoulder. They were old now, their children grown and their grandchildren growing, but in that moment, they were also forever young, 2 people who had taken a chance on love and built a life beyond their wildest dreams. "I love you, Olivia Zimmerman," Harris whispered. "I love you, Harrison Zimmerman," she whispered back. And under the Nebraska stars, surrounded by family and held in the embrace of the land they loved, they knew that their story, which had begun with a broken stagecoach and a rancher's offer of shelter, had become the greatest love story of all, one written not in grand gestures but in decades of daily choosing each other, of building together, of loving through all seasons. It was, by any measure, a happily ever after earned through commitment, strengthened by trials, and sweetened by the knowledge that they had found in each other exactly what they needed. The rancher had offered his heart, and the stranded woman had accepted it, and together they had created something far more valuable than either could have built alone. A partnership, a family, a legacy, and a love that would endure long after they were gone, carried forward in the hearts and memories of everyone whose lives they had touched. Their story had come full circle, from that hot August day when a stagecoach broke down to this perfect summer evening surrounded by the fruits of their love. And if anyone had asked them whether they would choose differently, both would have answered the same: that the broken stage was not a disaster but a blessing, not an obstacle but a doorway, not an ending but the most perfect beginning imaginable.